Got it. Awesome. But again, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate the intro. You're a lot. You've had a big deal to do with my journey, and I appreciate everything you do with the Serenity Improvement Group, and of course the Zoom meeting, because I know it's affected a lot of people ever since COVID got started. So thank you for your service there. But again, my name's Rick Huffman. I'm a recovered alcoholic from the Tri-Cities. Grew up in Kingsport. Sobriety date is March 13th, 2013. In less than 2 weeks, I'll pick up 10 years, which is crazy to think about. I never thought I'd live this long. I never thought I'd live to be in my 30s, much less my 40s. So I'm sure, like most people, it's I'd have done it a lot differently. But I did it just the way I was supposed to, apparently. So God's been really cool and just been overwhelming me with blessings ever since I surrendered, to be honest. So a little bit about me. Grew up Tri-Cities area. I'm the middle of 3 boys. My older brother does not have the disease of alcoholism. My younger brother's dying of a drug addiction, and I can't get through to him. He can't hear me. We've got too much of a past. And from what my sponsor, my step work has shown me, is that it's not my job to fix him. It's my job to love him and be a brother. So I do that to the best of my ability on a daily basis when I'm dealing with him. But I hear a lot of, I love speaker tapes. Like Stephen mentioned earlier, I got involved with the Roundup. There was three of us alcoholics were talking about how we got tired of traveling all over the place to get a Roundup going. And we said, why not us? So we put our heads together, got on our knees, prayed, and God has borne out the Appalachian Regional Roundup, which is R. So we were all in the Pirates back in the day. But I love AA. I love AA. So let's start back a little bit. I truly believe I was always born an alcoholic. Through my men's process, I've come to find out like I'm at least 3rd generation that I know of alcoholic. Now, neither one of my parents drank, still don't drink. My granddad got sober in AA, went to meetings for about 5 years, and then got involved with the church, and God directed him to doing service work through other realms. But he never went back to meetings after that. But I didn't find any of that out until I went through the men's process, well after he had died, which has really been cool. So God's got a way of, like, for me, it's like from when I finally surrendered in March of 2013, God has been throwing up these signs saying, I got you, or hey dummy. And it's kind of been my go-to prayer. Everybody's been like, so every job that I've had in sobriety and every time I've moved, my prayers go just like this. God, I'm deaf, blind, and stupid, so I need a big neon sign that says, hey, it's me. And I've yet to say that prayer and not have a sign within 48 hours. And that's just my personal journey. And I've been through quite a few jobs, been fired and been so cold sober and been fired and been promoted. But I've got the opportunity also to travel all over the United States, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do. It's got to backtrack. So, it's cliche, but I mean, it's true. I very vivid memories as a kid. I hear my older brother talk about his day at school with my parents at the dinner table, them going back and forth talking, and me sitting there with my mouth shut, usually stuffing food in, but just being like, who are these people? Like, how are they able? I don't know. I always felt so disconnected from them. And come to find out, I know it's a spiritual sickness now, but at the moment, it's really terrifying as a kid, to be in a family of 5. And everybody seems to have a special relationship with me. So thank God alcohol came along, or I probably would have made the ultimate sacrifice, to be honest with you. But so alcohol for me came along. My granddad was a home physician in rural East Tennessee back forever ago. When I say rural, like, so when he died in 2004, we went through like his books, seeing like, he'd log like, the Johnsons, 3 kids, help with the birth of the 3rd or the 4th. And then on the side, it would say payment, it'd be like a dozen eggs, or it'd be 2 chickens, or a thing of cornbread. But on quite a few of those, being it's East Tennessee, there was a lot of Mountain Dew, real Mountain Dew. When we all know most people know what that is. So my first experience with alcohol came at the age of 8. I was outside playing with my brother, outside playing, walked inside, get something to drink, opened the fridge up, and there was a big 2-liter Mountain Dew. And my granddad, being a doctor, was always very health conscious. So he was not one to ever have soda around. But I remember very vividly, and me and my dad have talked about it since, like them sitting at the kitchen table snickering when I opened that fridge. I said, "Oh yeah, help yourself. No need to get a glass. Just turn it on up. You'll be fine. Nobody else here is going to drink that." And I still to this day remember the smell when it came out. Like, oh, this doesn't smell right, but it's got Mountain Dew written on the outside of the bottle. And I turned it up, and one big gulp and turned into 2 big gulps, and the liquid heat went down my throat, hit the belly, and just exploded. And I know I'm an alcoholic too, because my mouth still waters to this day. And I'm 42, so that's been 34 years ago when that happened. That doesn't make me an alcoholic, but that's one of the little signs for me. But I remember that feeling, I remember that sensation, and I remember most importantly, on that second gulp, was my shoulders rolled back, and I took my first real breath of peace. I don't, being only 8 years old, everything seems like it's the end of the world anyways. But in that moment, the seed was planted, and I would chase that for many years. And of course, being that young, it's you're not going to be able to sneak off to granddad's house and drink all the time. But the seed was planted, so I remember that very vividly. Middle school, I was an athlete growing up. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 290-ish now, but I've always been a big kid. Played a lot of sports, played basketball, football, and baseball, and I loved the team camaraderie. I loved being a part of a team. I really did. For some reason, I didn't get that when I was in my family, but I got it with other peers. So I don't say like normal kids in Tri-Cities. We all experimented at young age. Middle school, I got in trouble a little bit, of course. Stole my first car when I was 13, went to juvie, and first DUI when I was 14. Second DUI when I was 16, and last DUI was when I was 20. So technically, I've never been arrested for alcohol when I could legally drink. I didn't get sober, of course, till I was 32, but alcohol's always played a very important part of my life. And I remember like each time, like it was always like, so I remember the second one when I got arrested at 16, and being I was still a juvenile, the police officer wouldn't put me in jail. He'd sit me out in the lobby, and we talked for like 2 hours till my mom showed up. And I remember the officer getting up and going to my mom, was like, we love Rick. I mean, Rick is a great person. He just made a stupid mistake, and he's just a real pleasure to be around. And I still remember this because she still teases me about it. It's like, that cop who got you out of that truck. I didn't even get grounded for that. It was just an accident. I had a buddy that had passed away. We had gone to his graveside, and that's how I justify it was that. But I've always had a gift to be able to smooth, I guess. So mom always thought I'd be a great sales rep, which I was until I was great in sales until I got sober. And then my sponsor started talking about honesty and things like that, which was very difficult for me because I've never done it before. But anyways, I digress. I love alcohol. So my first introduction to AA was a very young age, 13 years old. They mandatory classes. And as a kid, you hear, I'd see somebody, probably 10 years younger than me, 32 in the meeting, and be like, this guy's a loser. That'll never be me. Never be me. And I heard a lot of God this and God that. And I also heard a lot of crying about stupid. I perceived as stupid. Now, looking back on it, it was important to the people that were sharing it, but just things I couldn't relate to. My lawnmower blade broke, or my wife keeps cheating on me, and these are all things, as a child, these are all irrelevant things. I was really just in a bad place at the wrong time. So AA was silly. Plus, I was raised Southern Baptist, so if anybody's not familiar with how I was, and I apologize, I've got a cough. I was at a concert all weekend with 9 other AA members, and we got some yelling, and I walked around in the rain in Nashville with flip-flops on because I'm stupid. But oh, excuse me. I apologize. I lost where I was. So anyways, I love booze, and booze loved me for a long time. And we had a very, very long relationship together. I got married at a young age. I was 20 when we met. She was 25. She lived in Knoxville. Tri-Cities was about 100 miles away. Met through a mutual friend. Now, she didn't know I was 20, but by God, I was. And she didn't find that out for about 9 months. Once I had my hooks in her, then the truth came out, and I was like, oh, it's too late now. But got married at a young age. I was 22 when we finally got married. She was the first woman that I believe God put her in my life for a couple different reasons. But in the moment, it was, this is the first woman I'd ever been with that that could bang like I could bang. She could go on 2-3 week benders and survive on little sleep. She didn't have an off button, and I thought, this is my ride and die too. And she was for a long time until she got pregnant, and then she became a mother, and I could not be my father at that time. So I've got a 14-year-old, be 14 in a couple weeks. He was born, he's 13. Just kind of talk about a little bit of like a story, about the powerlessness of alcohol. I've been in and out of treatment before he was born at least 4 times. And I say treatment very loosely. I would go detox, get rid of the shakes, have my plan. I'd go to my meetings just to get my paper signed and leave. I tried to get sober in 2008 when my wife was pregnant with my boy, and excuse me. And I remember thinking, this will be different this time because I'm going to actually get a sponsor, go through the steps. At that time, I was living in Knoxville, and I was a loan officer. Somehow, I'm a good sales guy. Small business guys love me, and my turnover was fantastic when it comes to my collections, just because the guys that I knew I drank with and I partied with, so they were always 100%. And anyways, bank loved me because I bring in some money. However, I'll get to that here in a minute. So anyways, I go to treatment in 2012 because I want to get sober. I want to be a dad. My dad never drank, used, anything like that, but I had lots of friends. Like I had a friend die from the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction every year from the age of 13 until I was 23. So for 10 years straight, I had somebody in my close-knit circle that had passed away. And my ex-wife had made a point, we were married at like the funerals we were going, she was like, Rick, this isn't normal. Because we'd have like pictures of us in high school where it'd be like a big group of us. And then like you just slowly see, it was the same picture would keep showing up in all these funerals. It was like you just kind of marked them off. Well, he's dead. They died. It was like suicide, overdose, car wreck. Just the one of them was murdered. And it's not normal. But in my life, it was normal. That's what I thought. I thought that's just how it was. Plus, I always liked, I always thought I was growing up. I enjoyed running around with the older crowd, we'll put it that way, because they could drink like I could drink, So 2012, went to treatment. Now I was the guy, when I got out of there, I was very serious, I thought. But I was the guy who would leave. At that time, I worked at a bank, and I would leave. I went to a new meeting with my home meeting, and it was a building over from where I worked. But I'm a smoker still, but I would leave work for my lunch, go smoke, grab lunch, then go to the meeting in my nice 3-piece suit. This was all clean, and there was something up here that looked real nice. But I come in late, and I'd always leave early. because I needed to smoke before I got back to work. I only had an hour for lunch. But in my mind, I was justifying it as in, I'm going to a meeting. I had a sponsor. He just teased about how I wasn't going to do anything, and he was right. But I white knuckled it for almost 3 months. And in the past, I've usually gone about right at 3 months is kind of like my bubble. I don't know, somewhere in my brain, I had it programmed that like if I made it to 100 days, this stuff might work, or maybe I'd actually have to do some work. And maybe that was more like it. But I never made it to 100 days ever from the first time going to into treatment and going to AA meetings to then. So for me, come to find out, I've got a spiritual disease that centers on the inside, but I've got a brain that tells me, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't really have that, Rick. If you maintain with dry goods, you will be fine. And then that seed's there. And if I'm not clearing out this pipe, if I'm not clearing out this pipe that's connected to God. So the way I visualize it today is, God's inside of all of us, every single one of us. We all have a spiritual power that's inside of us, and there's a pipeline that goes down into it. And the process of the steps is the process of cleaning out that pipe so I can have full contact with God. So if you're 100 days clean and sober, and you're not clearing out the pipe, that sucker starts to overflow. And there's two options for a guy like me, and it's either get spiritual help, and I love how the big book man spoke to me so much this last time, or I'm going to make the ultimate sacrifice. There's really only two options. So 2000, anyways, picked back on the race. Kid was born. Got 2 more years out of the marriage. During that time period, decided to work up a scam at work. Everybody's familiar with pyramid schemes, of course, and I love Shawshank Redemption, so I decided to create some people out of thin air, get some loans that I could approve under my limit, mass those up, and I built a big, huge, I should be in prison, to be honest with you, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Anyways, that all came to a head in July 4th of 2000, and yeah, it was 2012, where my company called me in and said, we got you. So told my wife, she said, get out. Instead of taking the money that I had been saving up, my 401k, because the amount of money that I'd embezzled was close to about 187,000. Instead of paying what I could off, I took that money and went on a bender, which went full, caddy bar the door. Moved back in with mom and dad, gave them the whole, I can't believe she's cheating on me. She's kicked me out of the house because she's found a new man, line of bullshit. And drank and used all that in a very short period of time. So it all came to a head for me. I came to in January of 2013 on their couch, and I still to this day don't remember the previous 2 months during the holiday season. But my mom was like, all right, you're done. You're out of here. We're not buying any of your bullshit. We know she didn't cheat on you. We know you've got a problem because we've seen it. We've been seeing it forever. You're out of here. And mom had showed me some Christmas pictures of me and my boy that I had no idea about. Not a clue that I had been down to see him. It was supervised with her grandparents, like me giving him Christmas gifts. And what hit at that time was the fear in this kid's eyes. Was like, who is this? I know y'all keep telling me he's my dad, but who is this? And it kind of shook me and shocked me. I ended up, again, that was January of 13. I ended up stealing some money from my brother, grabbing a couple bottles of Early Times, and was a big whiskey guy. Hopped in the car, and where we live at, Interstate 81, goes straight to Canada. So I got in my truck, started drinking, hit up 81, ran out of gas somewhere in Pennsylvania, found a rest area, and was like, everybody's going to be better without Rick. And that moment I grabbed my rope that I packed with me, went up into the woods at a rest area and tied myself off to a tree. And remember I mean, like in that moment, it was, well, everybody who's ever been in and around Rick is going to be better here in a minute. You know, no more worry, no more fear, no more any of this shit. And I'm a big guy, so when I tied myself off, I obviously didn't plan it too far ahead, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so I jumped and the fucking rope broke. So I got back up. I remember laying there on the ground for a second, thinking I can't even do this shit right. So I got back up and I doubled it or tripled it or something. Anyways, got back up, tied myself off, same thoughts. Everybody's going to be better. And I jumped again. Instead of the rope broken, the tree branch it broke that time. And thank God it did. But somewhere between me hitting the ground and this branch hitting me square in the face, God put a very vivid picture of my son at 35 years old, sitting in front of a shrink with a broken home, saying, "Why did my dad love me?" And that was a very, very powerful moment for me. And I bring that up because it was huge. I've never had anything like that before. I mean, like I'm like Steven, a lot of hallucinogenics growing up. So I'd seen a lot of stuff, but I hadn't experienced anything like that before. And again, mind you, it's January 13th. I didn't get sober until March. Called my dad, told him what's up. He took me to psych ward, locked me up for a couple weeks, got out, and I was on my path. I've got this vision. I know I got to get better. I didn't think AA was going to, AA was the last thing on my mind. I was thinking I got to go to church. I need to get baptized. So if anybody was raised like me, I mean, I've been baptized more times than a lot of people have had glasses of water. I mean, I used to get baptized like every Sunday for about 12 years growing up, you know. So I didn't want to go to hell. It sounded awful. And I loved getting baptized because everybody got to look at me and I was a center of attention. But anyways, so I'm going to church, but I'm not going through, I didn't know, I still have these thoughts, right? I still have these thoughts like I'm a piece of shit. I'm worthless. I kind of picture, so I'm a visual learner. So like I picture it like going through life. I put on this backpack and this pair of shoes when I was a young kid, right? And in this backpack, I would throw in every time I stole, every time I cheated, every time I lied. And I just kind of throw it back there. I throw it back there. And this is going up, you know, I mean, even at a young, you know, before I was 8 and had my very first drink, I was throwing shit in my backpack. But I've got like this pair of shoes that for every day I wake up spiritually sick, my shoes get another layer of concrete, right? So I got all this fear, all this weight on my back, and I got these shoes that I can't get any traction moving forward in life. And I took that first drink at a young age. Hell, the backpack flew off, my shoes fell off, I'm running barefoot, and I feel fantastic. So that seed was planted at that time, and then I chased that, and it worked for a long time too, I thought. But when you're 32 years old and you've thrown a career away, you've been in jail multiple times, you've thrown your family away, that backpack gets really damn heavy. And those shoes are so thick with concrete, I can't get any momentum going in life whatsoever because I'm constantly ate up with fear, shame, guilt, remorse, what if, burnt bridges, all this shit. There I'm in February, same at 13, and I'm not cleaning my pipe out, man. Like my connection to God's not going anywhere. It's still clogged up with all this junk. And suicide came right back into my mind again. And luckily my mom said, "You've got 24 hours to be in treatment or you're out, period." She's like, "You keep talking about you want to get help, you want to get this, but you're still you're still an asshole, you're still not working, still couldn't find jobs. It's hard to find jobs when you've got embezzlement listed on your resume." And I picked up again. I thank God I did pick up again because I was close to skipping the rope and going straight to the gun. But I picked up, used for another couple weeks, and then she went off to treatment. Went to this place in Nashville, Tennessee called Discovery Place. The Discovery Place is a non-insurance based facility. Basically what it is, it's a big book boot camp. That's really what it is. So I came in then there's no pharmaceuticals to come down. You know, they keep an eye on you, but if you were having a seizure, they'd let you seize and then they call the ambulance and take you in. But I sat there and sweated for a week in a bed and rolling over, going back and forth. Finally had enough power to get up, and they threw me in the group, and we went straight into step one. And we went straight to the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and it talked about the disease of alcoholism in the doctor's opinion. And it started talking about all these things that were so, I remember like early on, and even today, like I'll pull the big book and I'll go through the big book, and the big book study, it's like it still talks to me. Like I can hear it. I can hear it. And I think God gives every alcoholic, like, I think when your ass gets kicked just hard enough, he opens your mind just a little bit for the true message to get in, that you're not a horrible person. Yeah, you made some terrible mistakes, but you're not a piece of shit. You just suffer from a spiritual illness, and God will fix it. So, I was all in at that point. I was there for 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, I already had, I had my men's list. We went straight out of the big book very quick. I could relate. Yeah, there's a chance there's a God. And one thing that was really easy for me, if anybody's ever hung up on like the God aspect of working with a newcomer, it really broke through for me was like, Rick, once I did a thorough first step was, if you suffer from the disease of alcoholism, you have a disease that centers in your brain. And the question was posed to me, and I posed it to the men that I work with, is it possible or probable that if you've got a disease that centers in your brain, is your concept of God off? And that was such an eye-opening, and I see so many men that I work with who were raised like I was, or even the opposite of the way that I was, but a lot of men that are hung up on the higher power and God and all this stuff. And it's like, once I truly accepted that I have the disease of alcoholism, and I could literally go back and think about trying to control drinking, and it wasn't normal that people had different bottles for each day scattered around their house. I thought that was just something that I always thought I was just being responsible doing that. But all these ways of like trying to control and enjoy, there was never, as a real alcoholic, like that doesn't exist. Controlling and enjoyment are two guys who are fighting, and it sucks. I could either enjoy or I'm going to control, but I can't do both. But I went through my past, sat down with a man, we went through that, and opened up the door for a higher power, for God to walk through. And I didn't think any of it was going to work, to be honest with you. My whole plan was like, I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to give it 100%. They tell me to jump, I'm going to jump. They tell me to row, I'm going to row. I'm going to give it 1 year. If it doesn't work, now I still had my guns. So that was my plan. And what happened for me was, during that initial 30 days, God snuck in. He snuck in. And then come to find out later on, like, he didn't actually sneak in, he just showed out, because he was already in there the whole time anyways, which was super cool. So men's process, I thought I would never be able to do that. Going to meetings through the years, it was always, of course I've got a problem. Yeah, of course there's a God. Yeah, I think he can help me. I'm not telling anybody that stuff. Men's, that's, you don't know what I've done. I can't really do that. But luckily, with the help of a sponsor who'd had a spiritual awakening through the process of the steps, he guided me through that process. And I work with more men who struggle with 9 than 4 and 5, for me personally. Like I've probably heard close to 500 steps, I bet. Probably close to it. Sponsees wise, I've probably worked with maybe 12 or 15 that have actually gone through the process of the amends, and like gotten a majority of those done, and their lives are fucking awesome. But it's just crazy thinking about that numbers. So anyway, I leave Nashville, stop by my ex-father-in-law's house in Knoxville, heading back to the Tri-Cities, back in March, or April. I was there for a month. Got it in my life, thought it was a great idea. Hey, I probably should stop by and say I'm sorry to him. It's a horrible idea, because all he's thinking is, well, you've abandoned my daughter, you've stolen this. Come to find out, the man had actually stepped up and paid all this money I had embezzled from the bank back. Didn't tell me, but that's what he did. So I go knock on the door, say, hey, I'm sober and clean. I'm fired up about God. And he came out swinging, just left and right. You piece of shit, get off my property. And I'm freaking out, like, oh, I can't believe you're doing this to me. Don't you understand what's happened? I'm awake. And he didn't give a shit about any of that stuff. He wanted me to be a father. He wanted me to be a good ex-husband. What's happened though, when it was time to get to the amends process with him, that's when the truth came out, and we got on a payment plan. So I've been on a payment plan with him for 9.5 years now, and of that money, I owe just a hair over 5 figures, which is crazy to think about what God's done for us in our relationship. But so, anyways, I was terrified early on. I was terrified to stay at home. I just wanted to hang out in the AA meetings, and like where we're in Johnson City, there's if you ever get a chance to go to Johnson City to go to a meeting, there's a group called Central that saved my life. Man, they got a bad rap, but they were my time. Loud, obnoxious, and they needed some energy. I think that's why God put me there. But 4 meetings a day for my first month, maybe first 45 days, and got a good sponsor there. RC had a way of telling me that I was stupid and ignorant by telling me he loves me in certain ways. It was so baffling. Like I remember so many conversations with him going through the process. I'd get in the car and be like, yeah, it's God, he just called me stupid. And then I call a buddy and he'd be like, yeah, he did. But anyways, do what he says. So I jumped in, man, started doing the work, got involved with the home group early, got a position, started doing the literature chair. My first business meeting was a catastrophe, which was famous 5 of us. And anybody from that area knows Miss Marty, who's passed away, came in, ripped the urinal off the men's bathroom, threw it on the floor, said, I'm done with this shit, and I'm out of here. Threw her keys down and walked out, and they looked at me and said, hey, would you like a position? I was like, yeah, this sounds great. But I got involved, yeah. My sponsor made me get involved. He made me get involved and made me take meetings in the jails, even though I didn't think I had anything to deal with. One of the things that the men that I still work with today are the involvement with those that are still sick and suffering, and especially like early on. So like one of the things I didn't realize until hindsight was like, if I'm in treatment, and I've been in treatment a lot, or if I'm in jail, and I've been to jail quite a few times, like am I going to believe the guy who's talking about 10 years of sobriety, 35 years of sobriety, or am I going to believe the guy who's got 100 days? How do you get 100 days? How do you get 100? That was my thing. Like, how do you get 100 days? And that cliche of one day at a time. I mean, there's no bigger truth in the world than one day at a time. But God had, God showed off a lot in my life. So I ended up getting a sales job early on because my sponsor made me get a job because he said, Rick, you got a lot of money you got to pay back, so let's get to work. But I did it honestly, and that was hard for me. I'm sure other people were okay with it, but like I never sold anything honestly, and I did that job for 3 years. Thought I was going to get fired 2 or 3 times. Each time I went into the office to get fired, I thought I got a promotion, which was so crazy. Like they'd open up a new position and be like, Rick, you're such a great asset. We love having you around here. Yeah, your numbers kind of suck, but you have a gift to lift people. People love working with you. So we're going to create something new for you. I did that for 3 years, paid off a ton of debt. But I knew God had something more planned for me. So I did my prayer that I mentioned earlier. I'm deaf, blind, and stupid, God, and I need a sign. That was on a Sunday night. My older brother, who's a very spiritual man, called me and was like, hey, I was doing my meditation this morning, and I had I could vividly see you standing across my street selling houses. Have you ever thought about getting into real estate? I was like, I love to get into real estate. And we've got a buddy of ours, and Stephen do that there's a lot of people who do real estate, in recovery. So got into, did that for about a year, sucked at it, was terrible at it, right? All the headway I've gotten ahead on on my bills and my child support had all gotten in the rears. And I was crying to my sponsor one night. He said, well, it's about time for that prayer, even though it might be something you want to do. Let's see what God's got ready for you. And then did that. And the next day, a buddy of mine, Joey, who I sponsored in treatment, called from Atlanta and offered me a position. Just working inside of hospitals doing like networking stuff. Zero experience doing any of that stuff. But that's kind of spurned out. I mean, that's been the last 5 years. I've switched companies again. I get the opportunity to travel all over the U.S., go to AA meetings all over the United States. I live an awesome life. So one thing I want to talk about real quick before we wrap up is like the amends. So like I did a lot of damage to my kids. So during my amends process, I had made amends to my child. So I got sober. He was 4. When it was time for me to do my amends with him, he was 5, almost 6. And one of the questions that I asked other people, but I didn't ask him, was, is there anything else you want to talk about? Okay, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I don't know if there's somebody on here that's had the same issues, but my kid he's going to turn 14. When he was 9, my ex-wife would call crying because she'd find him in his room sitting in the dark. Like, I don't know why he's sitting in there. Like, he'd act out at school. And it was like all this shit kept happening. You know, we got him in therapy. We got all this stuff going on. And I brought it up to a guy named John P., who was I think he was our delegate in the state of Tennessee at one of our assemblies we were doing, because I got involved with assembly work, with service work on the state level. And he had talked about his daughter and about very similar situation. He goes, go back and readdress that amends and see what happens. And I did that. And I took him to a park and I sat down with him and I brought it all back up again, the things that I'd known that I'd done. And I asked that very important question: is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything else that I didn't bring up that you need to get off? And he sat there for 2 hours talking about vivid memories of sitting at the top of the stairs waiting for me to come home when I was out at the bar, and not knowing if it was happy dad or mad dad, if it was sad dad or angry dad. Is it? And he was like, he went on and on about just like, and I didn't know he had any, I thought the kid's asleep. He's 3 or 4 years old, 2 or 3 years old. He had very vivid memories of being scared and being terrified. And when we talked about all that, it was hard. It was hard for me to listen. But what happened was I got to watch God go inside this kid like he did with me through the process of the steps and clean this pipe out. And this connection that was blocking him off from the spirit reconnected. And he's a straight A student now. After that, he's not been in therapy since about a month after that. But everything changed with him and our relationship. I mean, his mom's relationship. She's remarried, and we're better parents today than we ever were when we were together. We co-parent very well. We have even though I work on the road, I get him every weekend that I want him. We do a weekly call. This is what my son's sharing with me. What's he sharing with you? This is what I'm talking about. It's so much better than I ever could imagine when it all began. And it's exciting about seeing what's next. What's next. I know one of our friends, Hunter, who lives in Knoxville now, would remind me when I talk about my, God's been so good, man, this, and this. And I was like, I'm just scared it's going to go away. And he said, Rick, God can't give you more blessings unless you're willing to give away the blessings you already have. So don't hold on to anything that you have. I encourage you not to hold on to anything that you have with both hands. But the more stuff you surrender, the more stuff he can give you. And that's been more, God, it's one of those truths. Like, I know God is it. Like, there's no question in my life. I've experienced it through many amends, through working with new guys. I mean, I've been blessed with like watching men become men, which is so cool. Become dads, become sons, become brothers. To watch families explode. And sometimes it's just beautiful just to sit back and watch it. But Yeah, Steven, I love you, brother. We've had some great times together, man. I still talk about that cheeseburger. But with that, can we just wrap up with a prayer?
Rick, we'll do that right. We'll do that right before we close. Okay.
Okay. I appreciate y'all letting me share.